coming up on this episode of The Prodigal Life.
The peace that Christ is talking about is a different peace. It's more of a spiritual level, spiritual peace. So the way that we use it in the secular world, it's juxtaposed to something that's violent. But when Christ uses the word peace, it's a tranquility. It's resting in the knowledge and the security of God's love. That's what brings peace.
Look at St. Lawrence. He's one of my very favorites. He's absolutely one of my very favorite saints because he was barbecued to death. Literally, they made him a hot dog. They put him on the grill. And you know what the saint said? He looked up at the people that were killing him and said, "I'm done on this side, turn me over."
Are you away from your faith?
Do you wonder why you're Catholic? Do you really want to know more?
If God is so good and he made a beautiful and amazing world, then why does life feel so messy and difficult and painful sometimes?
Do you feel stuck and want to take your faith to that next level? Join us on The Prodigal Life as me and Ellen and Nick have an honest and open discussion about all things important in our faith life. Welcome to The Prodigal Life.
Welcome back to The Prodigal Life. Again, I am Nick, Ellen, Deacon Harold. We're all here today to navigate peace, and I think it's going to be a good conversation. But before we dive into it, Deacon Harold.
Yeah, just go to theprodigallife.com, our website. There you will find all the previous episodes to the podcast. We'll have special gifts there for you, maybe even some merch. You know, we'll see how that goes. And you can also be a patron. You know, we love the support. You know, if you've been enjoying what you've been hearing, you've been watching, we're so grateful. We want to continue to bring you that great content. Just go to our website and go to Light Bearers. We will serve. And you can make a donation at whatever level you feel comfortable. But, you know, the higher, the better. You know, I'm just saying.
You want
just
to be
saying.
a seraphim.
That's right. And about the app.
And hi, and I am Ellen, and thank you for joining us. And you all need the app. That's the most important thing that you got to do. So you're going to go to your desktop or your laptop or your tablet, and you're going to go to theawakenapp.io, or you're just going to go to your Apple Play Store or Google Play Store and download the Awaken Catholic app. It's got a beautiful sun. It's hard to miss. And you will be able to download a bunch of different podcasts, music, prayers, and most importantly, there is a beautiful messaging app that they have that is 100% Catholic. It's safe. You can set up a family account if you want, and you'd be able to communicate in a 100% Catholic, safe environment with your family members and friends. You should do that.
I totally agree. I think that was put beautifully, Ellen. Thank you for that. So, peace be with you guys.
Peace be with you.
Your spirit.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So Ellen hasn't been to Mass in almost a decade. Yeah, and, you know, may the peace of God, which is beyond all understanding, be with us always, right? And show each other a sign of peace. Peace, 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 peace.
Right.
We're all about that peace. But at the same time, Jesus said, I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. What the heck is that about, Jesus? Prince of Peace. What are you doing, Prince of Peace?
Talk about that, Deacon.
What's that sword
Tell us
about?
what Jesus meant when he said that.
Yeah, so when we talk about peace, the first place our mind wants to go is to the avoidance of war or the opposite of war. You know, so we juxtapose it with something that's violent and with something that's not violent. You know, something that causes a lot of turmoil and something that doesn't cause turmoil. You know, but actually, the peace that Christ is talking about is a different peace. It's more of a spiritual level, spiritual peace. So the way that we use it in the secular world, it's juxtaposed to something that's violent. But when Christ uses the word peace, it's a tranquility. It's resting in the knowledge and the security of God's love. That's what brings peace. And when I think about it, you know, Romans chapter 8, I think does a great job. St. Paul does a great job talking about what peace is. So he says there, those who set their mind on the things of the flesh focus on the things of the flesh. And the word he uses there in Greek is sarx. Now, sarx has a couple of meanings. One of them means flesh, like flesh on the bone, which is how Jesus uses it in John chapter 6. But the other meaning is worldly things, earthly things, possessions. So those who set their minds on the flesh, on worldly things, on the pursuit of earthly goods, set their minds on the things of the flesh. Makes sense. Right. Then he says those who set their mind on the spirit, the things of God, set their minds on godly things. Here's the key. To set the mind on the flesh is death. So to set your whole life and your way of thinking on the things of the world, death in Hebrew, mavet, means to cut yourself off from God's life. So when you set your things on the things of the world, you're actually cutting yourself off from God's life. But to focus on the things of the Spirit is life and peace. You see? So
nice.
Life, right? Again, not just but breathing, being alive,
Right.
but he means life in God, right? And peace in God, right? So again, it's a different level than our secular understanding of what life and peace is. Nice. So to set the minds on the things of God, that means we're setting our spirit on a course toward eternal salvation, where our ultimate fulfillment of life and peace will find its greatest glory.
Amen.
In the heart of God.
I love that idea that the peace is not the absence of violence. It's not merely the absence of violence, but in and of itself, it is a tangible, active power. It is grace. It is the serenity, and I think that is so huge. I love that.
Yeah, in a previous episode, I spoke about a traumatic event that had happened when I had to, really realize that nothing was mine. That I had pursued everything and thought I controlled everything, and I was in charge of my own destiny. You know what I mean? And I mean, it is true to a point. I mean, you work and you make a living and you provide and you do stuff like that. But when you look at it in God's view, you know what I mean, and try to remove yourself from it, you realize that, the only time I truly had any peace was the moment that I realized that nothing was mine, that all of it was a gift from God. And in that I could find there was just so much peace, and it was a horrible, traumatic situation dealing with somebody that was trying to commit suicide. But realizing that I had to trust God 100%, and in that I found tremendous peace, because I had to have that realization that I wasn't in charge. I was not in control. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So when people say they want peace in their life, what are they talking about? Because it's not contrary to violence, but it's not also things of the Spirit. I just want a peaceful life. I just want, so what is a secular meaning?
That deals with acceptance. Because I know even within, some, in some 12-step programs, I mean, the acceptance and, the solution to all of my problems today is acceptance. Because I have to accept the fact that, you can't control everything and you can't always make it the way you want. And sometimes God's plan for your life is different what your plan for your life is. And in that acceptance that maybe, what is that song? Thank God for unanswered prayers. I mean, how many times in your life have you prayed for something that had God given it to you, it would have been the worst thing that could have ever happened to you?
Absolutely.
So like, you pray you want this or you want that, or, there's this person that you're crazy about and you want to date and whatever. And then down the line you find out, oh my God, thank God God didn't answer that prayer. That would have been the worst thing that ever could have happened to me. So I guess to me, peace falls in the realm of acceptance and humility, like understanding that you sometimes have to just be okay with things not being okay.
Yeah, and you were asking, I think, also, like, what does the world present peace as? And something that came to mind for me right away is, like, the world presents peace, I think, more along the lines of that, the avoidance of violence. So it isn't just like this misunderstanding of what peace is that we just kind of tripped upon. I think it's a very actively pushed view.
It's a narrative. It's
a narrative that peace is just the absence of violence. So it doesn't just mean physical violence. It means awkward circumstances. It means awkward conversations, people with different opinions actually having dialogue about them, God forbid. Like, why are there topics that you never bring up at family gatherings? So that there can be peace. Yeah. Well, that's some crappy peace. I don't want any part of that kind of peace. That peace sucks.
But then there's the bigger peace that I think is what you're probably getting to, and it's a big concept. Realizing that no matter what happens to you, it's kind of what the early martyrs had to do. All the martyrs had to do in our faith. They had to accept their death, but be at peace because they knew where they were going.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the peace. Like, I mean, we go and we pray for world peace all the time. I mean, how many times have you prayed for world peace? And I was thinking, we've been at war since Adam and Eve were in the garden, whether we knew it or not. Mm-hmm. They were fighting, you know, Satan came and attacked. So there was a war almost from the beginning of time. And then what happened with Cain and Abel? I mean, and let's just go down, you know, you can go through the Bible. So, like, the fact, if we think that humanity is capable of living in peace without having war, that's kind of naive. I mean, it's never happened.
Yeah.
I mean, it just isn't possible. But I think if you can find peace in knowing that you're loved by a creator that is greater than you, and you rest comfortably in that knowledge that you are loved by Jesus and by God and by, you know, all of those that have gone before you that are in God's grace, no matter what happens to you, even if it's horrific, you're still going to be at peace. I mean, look at St. Lawrence. He's one of my very favorites. He's absolutely one of my very favorite saints because he was barbecued to death. Literally, they made him a hot dog. They put him on the grill. And you know what the saint said? This is what he said. He looked up at the people that were killing him and said, "I'm done on this side. Turn me over." That's peace in a really twisted way. But it is. I mean, I love him because he had the courage. I mean, look at Joan of Arc. What did she do? When you look at the people that have died for what they believed in, the people that have been willing to go the distance, you know, as St. Paul talks about, that's what was required. They were completely at peace because they knew where they were going. And that's what's missing in our world today. We don't have the peace. So many people don't understand where they have the opportunity to go.
Like, we're grasping onto this life and these circumstances because we even if we say and we think that we are people of faith, like, we're grasping onto this because some part of us is afraid that there isn't more than this.
Or we think there isn't, but we're not deserving of it.
Or that. But I think, like, Pope Benedict and Pope John Paul II, Pope Benedict XVI, Pope Emeritus, and Pope John Paul II both talked about this principle of practical atheisms, right? So they propose that it's more of a danger to the world and our faith than actual atheism. And so practical atheism being essentially that it would be someone who is a believer, but the way that they live their lives, it does not reflect that they believe in what they profess to believe. And so, like, you know, for example, which saint was it that was barbecued?
St. Lawrence.
St. Lawrence. You know, St. Lawrence, that came from a place of believing beyond a shadow 100%. Of a doubt that he was, you know, right on the cusp of seeing his maker, his savior, right? And so, like, that is real belief.
Yeah.
Any degree to which that is not our response to that situation is us not believing as much as St. Lawrence.
And not believing as much as we really should.
Point.
That's a very good point.
You know, in John chapter 20, you know, Jesus goes into the upper room where the apostles are locked on the evening of the resurrection. And, you know, the 10 apostles are there because, of course, Judas hung himself. We know the first time Thomas wasn't there. And Jesus' first words is, "Peace be with you."
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then they said, they were kind of startled, they were shocked. And he says again, "Peace be with you." But if you look at the Greek or if you think about what it looks like in Hebrew, it's almost you can translate it, "Peace is with you." Like, Christ himself is the peace. Mm-hmm. So he's not just bringing peace. He himself is the peace that's with you. And so I'm sure would have hearkened back at the apostles' mind to Jesus' words, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give it to you." So he's making a clear delineation between the peace that the world seeks and the peace that Christ wants to give us.
That's amazing.
So really, when you're praying for world peace, that's what you should be praying for.
Oh, yeah.
Is that people find that peace, that they know that they're safe in the arm, that, you know, that Jesus is there.
You know, and Nick brought up a good point. It's almost like we don't want peace. I mean, you think of all the. I mean, we don't want to sit down and actually talk with someone we disagree with without getting angry, or, you know, Why can't we just sit down? Okay, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. You're not trying to convince me of anything. Let's sit down and have a discussion. Because ultimately what we should be trying to get to is truth.
Always truth.
You know? We should, because it's the truth that's going to not just make us free, but also give us peace.
But that's not what we're after.
No, it's not.
All we want is the avoidance of awkwardness and the avoidance of conflict.
Well, and a lot of that stems from that other very popular word. Starts with a P, ends with an E, has a D in the middle. Pride.
Oh. I had a whole list of words that were coming to my head that were not that
Right,
one.
because,
You're right.
The only reason you would ever want to not have a discussion or, a discourse with another human being is if you feel that you're superior in what your opinion is.
Yeah, or on some level subconsciously insecure that you can't defend it well enough, or that.
So it's easier to get angry.
Or not the inability to convince this person to believe or to agree with you would somehow make us insecure that, like, what's wrong with me or what's wrong with my belief, or there's so many different levels at which are at play there. Yeah,
right. It's true. It's very true.
So think of Mary, the Blessed Virgin Mary, at the foot of the cross. Was she at peace?
Yeah, I believe that she was. And the reason I believe that is because she knew that this was. Now, it doesn't mean it wasn't painful or sore, you know what I mean, or agonizing, or, who would want to go through that? But I do believe that she had a peace because she knew that that was the destiny. And she knew that from Simeon. She carried that in her heart. And they say she held all those things in her heart. She knew what the ultimate thing was going to be.
I think it's a semantics question too, because I think it depends on how we define peace.
Yeah.
Because I think about Jesus in the garden. So if I think about why would Mary have had peace at the foot of the cross? Well, because she's perfect and sinless. Okay, so was Jesus, obviously, because he's God. And so was Jesus ever not at peace? Well, yeah, he was. Several times I think about the garden where he's, bleeding, sweating blood. I think about him flipping tables and making a whip so that he can cause a ruckus in the marketplace at the temple. I think, there's so many different situations where okay, Jesus wasn't always quote unquote peaceful, depending on how we define the word peace.
Right.
And so it doesn't necessarily mean that we are always in this ultra Zen, mode or something. It's more about a broader perspective on here. Maybe this is a good example. My wife and I, we're a young family. I'm not proposing that you guys aren't young. I'm just simply making a statement about myself and my family. My wife and I are raising a young family. We have, young kids, and disciplining them has been super, super interesting because we talked in previous episodes about my ability to emotionally detach, and sometimes it's a curse and sometimes it's a superpower. And when it comes to parenting, it can be more of a superpower than a curse occasionally when it comes to disciplining, because I can discipline my kids, I can correct them, I can send them to timeout, whatever it is, without feeling triggered by what's happening in front of me, right? I don't lose my peace. Even if I have to speak firmly and speak, strong as their father, so they understand, hey, I got to listen to this. Even if I have to get into that mode, I haven't lost my peace, and that might be more the type of peace that maybe Jesus never did lose, where it's even in the midst of a circumstance that there is an appropriate response to it that is emotional or whatever. There's a peace at play that I know, even if I have to be strong and speak up a little bit with my kids, speak firmly, I have peace in knowing that is my duty, and I am fulfilling a role that is I owe to them. I owe it to them to be the best father I can be, which is not overly passive.
Wouldn't you say that's what Jesus had to do during the crowning of thorns?
Right, yeah, sure.
That's the epitome of that.
Where he's letting his own children, in a sense, his own creation,
that which he came to save,
mock him, yeah.
That which he came to save.
No, absolutely. So when I think of Mary at the foot of the cross, the other thing I always think is she was definitely not happy, but was she joyful? Not joyful, joy,
this is the best thing ever,
or something,
yeah.
Well, if she had that knowledge, if that knowledge was truly given to her by God through Simeon, when it all was known, she probably knew what the cause. I tend to believe in, this is all supposition, but I tend to believe that if the Lord was going to reveal something like that to her, that he would kind of give her a reason why. Because they knew it, weren't they? The Jewish people are always waiting for the Savior.
Yeah, but
right?
none of them believed he was the Savior.
Right. Well,
even his
some
own
did.
apostles.
Right.
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 I mean, because we was heard in the gospel not too long ago, after Jesus, in Mark's gospel, he gives 3 different predictions of his crucifixion. And we heard in Mark's gospel just recently that right after that, the sons of Zebedee, James and John, the 2 brothers, start jockeying for position.
Can I
do
be
whatever
at the
you
right?
ask,
Can
right
you be
and
at
the
the
left, stuff like that. And so because they thought that him going to Jerusalem, okay, this is the time where Jesus is going to free us from the slavery, not slavery, but free us from oppression by the Romans. And
Well,
he's
didn't they think he was going to be like a
kingdom.
Roman warrior or something? Like he was.
Yeah,
gonna come in
that was a secular thing, but that wasn't Jesus' point at all. So they totally missed where he was going.
Yeah, he was in for peace.
Yeah, right.
Jesus was in for peace.
Death, though.
Correct.
And so when they saw the crucified, they're like, okay, well, this is the end of it then, But Mary there as his mother, so in one sense she wasn't at peace because, I mean, you watch your own flesh and blood suffer and die.
That's
I think
horrible.
of parents whose kids are going through cancer or some horrible disease or in an accident, and they're heartbroken, But at the same time, Mary was at peace knowing that this is something that had to happen. She may not fully understand the full, but like when she was 15 or 16 and the angel said, "You're going to have a baby, it's going to be Jesus," she's like, "Oh yeah, okay. I totally get what that means." She didn't she was totally, but she didn't fully understand the repercussions. She just trusted God. And so even at a moment like that, she's at peace because she's trusting God, even though at the same time she's agonizing over watching the death of her own child. So that's that kind of supernatural peace that I think God is trying to give each of us, at least a foretaste of what the heavenly peace would be like here on earth. When we're going through something difficult, he says we should just be at peace and just trust God. Padre Pio was that was his thing.
Pray and don't worry.
Don't worry.
Don't worry.
Be at peace. Be at peace.
Yeah.
I think that what you just described is it can sound to viewers, listeners, it could sound like a far-fetched, idealistic concept, but that is really what's on offer. That is what is offered to us by God, by the church, by God through the church. In many ways, that is what is being offered, and that is what has been seen in the lives of so many saints, and that is what we can see even to this day in the nice little old lady that we might see at Mass on a Sunday or at a daily Mass or whatever, or in younger people too. I'm not saying only old people can have peace, but I'm just saying like people that you might otherwise just kind of cast aside, like, oh, that's just the old lady that goes to Mass. But like, if you stop and look at her for a second, like, why is she at Mass? And what does her life look like? There is peace that we can have here and now. I hear repeatedly from family members, friends, and you guys are in town right now for a very concentrated amount of work. We're recording a bunch of episodes for this podcast, but when it isn't like this, I hear repeatedly from so many friends and family acquaintances that when they come to our house, that they sense a grace, a peace, a serenity here that makes people want to come here. We don't even have the nicest house in my circle of friends. We don't have the nicest house in we have a nice house, but it's like what people are drawn to here is more that there's a life of grace and of peace here. Listen, it's not all bubbles and farts, okay? We don't like levitate when we pray. We don't never argue.
Right.
But there is a peace that we work hard to achieve. Not so that other people comment on it, but because, hey, life's better when you have peace. We live a sacramental life. We make God the Lord of our lives, and we try. You talked about your parents holding hands when they would argue. Alina and I do that. We try so hard to do the right thing always, no matter what, and it's a palpable, it's a tangible thing.
It permeates your home.
And it's real and it's achievable. It's not just some ideal, and you can have that too. Like I want that, even though in many ways people comment on that, whatever, like I never want to stop trying to go deeper into that reality. because I know that it makes me a better husband. It makes me a better father. It makes me a better businessman. It makes me a better evangelist. It makes me a better person who might run into a homeless person on the street, and it'll make me engage with that person in a way that I might not have otherwise. Like on so many levels, I never want to stop striving for that more deeply.
Do you see that? Do you feel that? Because when you're talking about peace, and it is a very peaceful home. I will testify to that. But I think that possibly peace and love, they're synonymous. I mean, because if something is filled with love, you know what I mean? Because Jesus is, God is love, right? He says so.
Yeah, yeah.
So if God is love and you truly accept and want to be part of that love relationship, then I think that peace is attainable.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the martyrs, right? So like St. John Brebeuf, right? The guys that were the Jesuit priests that were French priests that were killed
Today's their feast
by
day.
Native Americans, or St. Ignatius of Antioch or whatever on his way. I mean, they were praying for martyrdom. Like I hope that I could be counted among them. I'm like,
that's amazing.
Are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
You want to be martyred?
Alive. They were skinned alive.
I couldn't say that. I mean, now, for example, I mentioned in the episode that if I go to a Muslim country or some other country where I could, that's fine.
Martyred,
but I don't desire it. I don't go there hoping, oh man, I hope this is the day that I be. I mean, so to even be in that mindset.
But to me, basically, it's being in so much peace with God and so much grace and understanding so much what your destiny is and what God's plan is for you.
I'm conflicted about that. I'm conflicted about that personally, but I can admire where they're coming from. I don't personally agree with that mentality or like even the notion that it's right, but I can see how others.
It's amazing though.
But
it's a profound bravery for sure.
So some people would say, okay, that level is for the saints. What about I'm just a person in the pew?
Well,
what about me?
See, even that notion, I don't know, because like I think God doesn't want us to squander the gift of the life He gave us.
Right.
I think just like we shouldn't. I wouldn't desire to die for my wife. Like I don't wake up in the morning thinking I love my wife so much that I want to die for her today. No, I love her so much that I want to stick around as long as possible. To be with her in this relationship, but B, so that I can continue to serve her, protect her, provide for her, love her. You know what I mean? Like, and I never want to ever be so dismissive of the life God gave me here on earth and the impact that I can have here on earth by serving those around me, by never ceasing to spread the gospel. I never want to squander or be dismissive of the gift of the life we have here on earth, even if we're comfortable with the idea of dying. I don't know that I would ever find it to be the right mentality to like be excited to be a martyr.
Right. Well, I mean, it's extreme. I mean,
it's super extreme.
That's super. And I don't know that many are called to be that extreme, but I'm grateful for the ones that did.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for the martyrs that were willing.
Yeah. And I think we should all be willing. That's
I mean, they were actually desiring it. They were like asking for it, and because what we have to die to is die to ourselves.
Right.
Yes.
And that's the death.
But then
we
there's
have to
the
die
greatest
to
peace.
ourselves
But
every
that's
day.
the greatest peace. When you do die to yourself is when you finally attain that peace, because then you really are in communion with Christ.
Yeah. Amen.
That's the true thing.
That's possible. Yeah.
I mean,
so Jesus, the peace I leave with you, our peace I give to you. So it's also a gift because He wants to leave us with peace. He knew He was going to die. He knew He was going to send to the right hand of the Father, and He left us a church.
Right.
So the church then, as the vehicle of Christ's continued presence in the world, His authority in the world.
Body, soul,
Right. He gave us all of that, but it all has directed to give us a peace. Right. And right now, let's be real, man. There's all this coronavirus, this and vaccination, that, and all the political stuff going on in the world. There's just so many things that want to destroy and take away our peace. So I think it's why it's important that we're talking about this, because people are saying, well, how can I get peace? How can I find peace in this world today?
With Christ.
But they're not looking in the right place.
Amen.
You have to go to Christ.
That's the problem.
We're not going to have peace with a mentality of fear and hoarding and self-preservation. Self-preservation is what the world is saying. Hey, this is how we're going to have peace. Everyone be self-preserving, or preserve your neighbor. All this, like, hey, mask up to protect yourself and your neighbor. All of these propositions are about like our ability to protect ourselves and each other. And it's like, there's a bigger picture here. There's for sure a bigger picture here.
So how do you find peace in, like all of us will get ruffled at a time. So maybe we should give them, give the audience, and those watching, what we do to seek peace when we find that we're in a challenging time.
For me, it's easy. Eucharistic Adoration. There's in that silence, in that quiet, where God speaks to you, He speaks to your heart, and your job is just to sit there and listen. Right. And that's where I find the peace, and that's where I find the peace to continue to doing the work that God has asked me to do, because it's not always easy, but I want to make sure I'm always faithful to what God has placed in my life, has aligned in my life, to people He has given me, entrusted to me to take care of. I always want to be at peace. So even if I have a difficult decision to make, speaking with God about it, conversing with God about adoration, there's a peace that whatever decision I made, I'm going to be okay with it. I'm going to be at peace with it, because I'm in my mind and my heart fully attempting to do what God has asked me to do.
And do you
be aligned with His will.
Do you use and like in an immediate situation, let's say you get a really bad phone call and it really just gets under your skin and ruffles it, do you go to a prayer, like, to try and center yourself back? Or?
Yeah, after you calm myself down.
Yeah, because we're human.
Whatever that call might be. Actually calm myself down. I mean, we that actually happened. I was actually at a parish mission, and right before the start of the mission, I got basically a 911 call from my wife. That my daughter was experiencing some kind of mental issue or something. And my wife's a psychologist, so she knows all the lingo. Right. So she tries to dumb it down for me. And so I actually end up having to leave the mission. And she was out of the country, so I had to fly and get my daughter and bring her back home. And that was the onset of a mental illness, which we just recently got diagnosed for her, and so that was hard. I mean, that was really hard. But I was at peace knowing, she's going to be all right, because I'm going to go get her. And she's going to be with me. And she's, and it was just a peace there, knowing that, okay, this situation is horrific. It's very difficult, but I'm going to be at peace because, I'm going to be there to take care of her. And I was praying the whole time and everything. And thanks be to God, it took a little while, but things are evening out.
Well, God bless. We'll keep her in our prayers.
Yeah,
that's for sure. What about you? What's your go-to for finding peace in the long haul and in the short haul?
I think it depends on what the source of my lack of peace is. So a couple that come to mind. One, if it's about someone I care about, and it's not like, directly about me, then I pray for them, and I reach out and I see if there's anything I can do to help that person. Right. But what's probably more significant or relevant to this conversation, this question, is how many times my lack of peace has more to do with me. And for me, a real source of struggle is the sin of pride and the vice of pride, whether it's as innocent, it's really not innocent, but whether it's as simple as the frustration I might feel by feeling misunderstood by someone, because for whatever reason, it's so important to me to make sure that if I see clearly that someone is upset with me or frustrated by me, but it's baseless because it's founded on a misunderstanding, like I have a really hard time letting that go internally, and I really want them to understand what is accurate so that they do like me, or they're happier with me or whatever. And so that's just an example. I won't create a litany of them, but when it's something to that effect, man, the Litany of Humility, we were talking about it after lunch today. The Litany of Humility is really a good gut check, because it helps you when you're going through it. It helps you kind of refocus and realign internally and just realize, why do I care what they think about me? Like God, like you're literally asking God to be thought of less and even I think it goes as far as less well. Like, may other people not think of me or see me or whatever.
Right.
Like, and I just love the pivot that litany of humility forces you to make internally. And it works. It's profound.
Right.
And
we'll
especially
we'll put it up so people will be able to see.
yeah,
what
absolutely.
It is,
We'll put a link to it.
Yeah, definitely.
And you know what we'll do is we'll add that to the Awaken app. There's a prayer library in the Awaken
yeah,
app.
we definitely should add
and
that.
we'll put the litany of humility in there.
It's a beautiful.
So yeah. How about you?
It's weird. Now, I automatically, whenever anything, I mean, I had a hard phone call yesterday. You know, from one of my family members. It was a very hard phone call, but I also had work that I needed to do that I knew the Lord wanted me to do. And I basically just turned it over. I've learned throughout the last few years to just say, okay, God, you're up and I'm out, because this is way above my pay grade. I you know, all I can do is love. You know what I mean? And do the tools of being, you know, a good mother or a good friend or a good daughter, or, you know what I mean, or a good sister. And I can do that. But at a level, I had to learn literally to turn it over and trust God enough to know that whatever it's going to be, it's going to be. And to still give the love to the person, like, you know, send the message or make the call or do what you need to do, but trust God. I find great peace also in Eucharistic Adoration. I try to go several times a week. I find amazing grace and peace in going to daily Mass. Sometimes I can only get there 5 or 6 times a week, but I try desperately to go 7 times a week. And believe it or not, Gregorian chant will help me center just about anything that is going down. If I just pull up my phone and hit Gregorian chant, whether it's the Rosary or the Sanctus, it doesn't matter. It really is a mute point. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. Patrick Lenk, though.
Oh, he's good.
Holy camole.
He's real good.
Just so good. If you don't know about Patrick Lenk, you really should look
Link
into him.
in the description.
He's the
Ethan,
bomb.
write that down.
Anyway, his Gregorian chant, it really, it's almost like being bathed in a peace.
Yeah.
Gregorian chant. You know that it's so divine that it's beyond all comprehension in this world.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about Tchaikovsky's the hymn of the cherubim. To me, that's where heaven and earth kiss. If you haven't listened to that, it will center you, and you just close your eyes. And if you're driving, don't close your eyes. But because most of my things happen while I'm in my car, because I drive a lot. So I always have to, you know, be prepared. But yeah, I always seek, and it's funny, I seek a lot of things of this world to keep me centered in the world that matters, you know, Christ's world. Because God gave us all these amazing human beings that can create such beautiful things. Sometimes it's even just listening to a talk by, you know, somebody that has a beautiful message. I mean, there's so many, we have such access to such depth of wisdom and experience that we can tap into. I mean, literally, if you're having a crisis with a family member, 10 to 1, if you put it in Catholic and then put in what the problem is, you're going to find a talk about that's going to help you deal with it in terms of your faith so that you don't get lost.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because it's so easy to get lost because there's a lot of crap out there too.
There really is.
That isn't peaceful.
So true. Yeah, and you mentioned, you touched lightly there for a moment on a little tease from Philippians 4:4-9, and I feel like reading that passage would be a great way to end this episode.
Go right ahead.
But before I do, I just want to share my first real exposure that was like a meaningful processing of that. Hey, Ethan, if she just brought that Bible in, could you bring that in here? My first meaningful processing of that passage was on my wedding day. It wasn't one of the readings at our wedding mass. It was the groomsmen and I were sitting around. Thanks so much, man. The groomsmen and I were sitting around in the room that we were getting ready, and you know, we're half dressed, we're having fun, goofing off and stuff, and then they come around to pray over me. And as they're praying over me, one of my groomsmen pulls out his Bible. He's a real nerd and doesn't go anywhere without his Bible.
Nice.
He actually hosts a show here at Awaken Catholic called The Catholic Citizen, Pete Range. But anyways, he opens it up, and he lets the Spirit speak to him. The Spirit told him to read this passage in this moment, and
so he was obedient.
He was obedient, and what's really cool is that when he did that, again, it's not like I'd never heard it before, but I had never really like let it speak to my heart before this moment. So he read the passage, and then time and time again, especially early in our marriage, God just made it so clear that this passage was meant to be like the passage for my wife and I. And it's really never stopped being that. And it's just been a super profound mantra, you could almost say, like that no matter what's going on, we will quote this to each other. And what's cool is that, like, on my wedding day, the Lord gave that to us.
It's a beautiful
and
gift.
Then since that moment, he's just time and time again made that a theme.
So Nick is going to take us out with Philippians
chapter 4, verses 4 through 9.
All righty. And thank you for joining us on this. We're going to end after this.
Yeah. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Let all men know your forbearance. The Lord is at hand. Have no anxiety about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will keep your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, do, and the God of peace will be with you.